Good morning. My name is Karolina Kasperska and I work for the British Council in Warsaw. In today's world, AI is probably the most discussed topic in all areas of our life. It is no different in English language teaching. To discuss opportunities and risks, I invited Nik Peachey. Welcome, Nik. Welcome to the studio.
Hi.
Nik is an award-winning consultant, a writer and a teacher trainer. He has worked with teachers around the globe for the last 25 years. You have been following the development of AI-powered tools for 2 decades now, right? Would you still describe yourself as technology enthusiast?
Enthusiast, that's an interesting word. My enthusiasm comes and goes, and it probably comes and goes as things change within technology. And you know, my first experience of educational technology goes back to the last century. You know, it's sort of the late 90s. And at that time, there were it was like the Wild West. There were lots of wonderful creative things happening. Anybody who could learn a little bit of HTML or coding could put something together and get it on the internet. And there was a kind of real enthusiasm there because this was all new and wonderful. And then it went through a phase of gradually becoming more controlled and more kind of corporate and started getting a bit boring. And then the Web 2.0 age came along in about 2005, and all of a sudden there was sort of lots of content generated by anyone. You know, anyone could go on YouTube and post a video, anyone could go do anything, you know, online. And that was great. It was really interesting again. And then things started to get boring again because that became really corporate and controlled and really artificial. And then, you know, AI has come along recently, or generative AI more recently. And that's made things, you know, really quite exciting again for a while. I don't know how long that will last, and at what point I'll start getting bored with that again, I don't know. But at the moment, my enthusiasm is quite good. I'm quite interested in, and there's some really interesting things going on.
Today we are meeting at the IATF of Poland conference in Łódź, where you delivered 2 kinds of sessions. One about the risks and how to mitigate the risks in regard to artificial intelligence, and the other one with practical tools for English teachers. For what you have seen, and you have trained so many teachers, you train like hundreds and thousands of teachers every year, how has the teacher's attitude toward the technology and the AI tools changed in the past 2 years?
It's really difficult to say because teachers are a very diverse bunch, you know, around the world. You know, a teacher in Poland is different from a teacher in another part of Poland who is different from a teacher in the UK who's different from a teacher in, you know, various parts of India or China or whatever. So, you know, I think, you know, it's hard to make sweeping general statements about teachers. And I think AI in a lot of ways has polarized a lot of the teaching community. There are people who are really enthusiastic about it, really see the potential there, and there are others that are very threatened by it. They see their students using it to cheat. They see that their students maybe understand it better than they do, and that's scary too. So, you know, there's a real diverse range of attitudes towards it. You know, I think those that are becoming enthusiastic, I think once the initial kind of burst of maybe a little too much enthusiasm calms down, I think are looking for kind of good ways to use it, and that's great. And you know, I have seen, I think if you get the training right, when you're helping teachers and you show them what the benefits can be, and it can be very practical, and that's what I try to do. I think, you know, there's a lot of interest in what it can do and a lot of interest in using it. I mean, one of the big advantages has been over the last couple of years that it's been free as well, which really helps and gives teachers access and time to try things out. But one of my worries, I guess, is that it will start to become more expensive, and and then it becomes much more difficult for teachers just to try things and to be involved in it. And so financially things might start to exclude them, and that worries me a bit, I think. And it's something that a lot of teachers worry about. The first question whenever I show them something is it free? Do I have to pay for it? How much is it?
Well, back in 2024 at the British Council, we published a piece of research that showed that only 20% of teachers feel prepared enough in order to work with the AI tools in the English classrooms. Do you think it has changed, or what makes the biggest difference in helping teachers feel confident with AI?
I don't know to what extent it's changed, because, when you're asking people whether they feel confident, feeling confident is one thing, but, actually you never know what you don't know is one of the things that I said yesterday. And, I don't know what I don't know. So I'm not sure how confident I feel. Whenever I go to do training, I never know whether, I'm going to get to the end of the training and people are going to say, yeah, but we knew all that already, because, people learn things quickly these days, or whether it's, they're just going to be blank and that's over my head. So it's difficult to know how much that's changing. I think in terms of the training, though, the most important thing is to try to keep it as practical as possible,
yes.
And show teachers how they can apply this to their teaching, how they can sort of personalise it for their classes and for their students. I mean, one of the things that I was doing yesterday is giving prompt templates, so that you're not just giving a prompt and saying this does this and it produces this. You give teachers a template that they can edit and personalise for their own classes. And I think that's a really important part of the training, that, teachers can see that they can adapt things for their students and make them quite personalised. That's one of the big things that really helps, I think, and really makes an impression on teachers.
In our research that I mentioned earlier, we really focus on all the important factors that the teachers have to consider or should consider when planning their using the tools in their classrooms. And one of the things that is really close to our heart is to put humans first. We really believe that the English teachers will not be replaced, but the profile of this job, of this role, will change. How do you see a typical English teacher in 10 years of time from now?
10 years is difficult.
It's a long time.
If you'd asked me 10 years ago how I saw, educational technology developing, I wouldn't have thought things would have changed so fast. It's quite interesting because, I think ChatGPT came out in November, or at least the first kind of big public release came out in November, but in the October I'd done a presentation on the future of English language teaching, and I got asked to do it again in January. And by January, because of what had happened in that November, most of this presentation was out of date, and I had to sort of rewrite the whole thing within 3 months. So things do change quickly. But I still see, I don't see teachers being, displaced. Particularly not from the physical space. There are teachers have superpowers, and the biggest one, I think, is empathy. That they have empathy for their students. Their students feel that they care for them, or good teachers make students feel that they care for them, and that's important. I think AI and technology is great for motivated, autonomous learning. It's fantastic, if you've got someone who's really motivated and wants to learn something. But if a lot of our students need a little bit of a push, and sometimes they need the carrot and the stick, and that's something that kind of teachers can be quite good at.
I think it raises a question of the purpose of the school. It's not
Yeah.
only a place where you
Yeah.
acquire knowledge and skills. It's
Yeah.
it's much more than that, especially in
Yes.
the early years of education.
Yeah, I mean that thing about, you learn more from sort of being with other kids or being with other adults than you do from the teachers in a lot of ways, sort of social skills and things like that, I think, which are really important. And, and just having role models as well. I think good teachers are role models too. So, and I don't think your Android teacher or whatever it is could be that role model, really.
Right, I totally agree. Well, AI is at the center of your professional life, right? And how do testing tools, analyzing them, describing them, affect you personally? How do you find your balance? And how much time a day do you spend completely away from AI?
It's hard to judge in terms of measuring time. I mean, I spend most of my working day on the computer when I'm at home, and some of that will be connected with AI, and some of it won't be. So it will vary, because I do a lot of writing, and I write what I write myself. I might go to AI to get some advice and some feedbacks, bounce some ideas around or something like that, get it to proofread or edit or suggest things or things like that. So as for the looking at tools, usually there's a bit of my morning that I spend doing that. I get up quite early, as we were talking about, and between about 5 and 7 o'clock, I sort of work on my own development, and so that's when I write my own stuff, and I go through looking at what's new and seeing if there's anything new and interesting that I can share, and maybe testing tools out. And I'm looking for something that will help me, and then if it helps me, well, it's probably going to help some other teachers, so then I can share it through various social media channels. But I do get away from those things as well, and originally I trained as a musician, and I still play jazz and play with people, and I've always avoided the kind of, there are lots of things that you can do with technology now and music, and I've always avoided getting into them so that, I have that gap, and so, when I'm playing the guitar, it's just the guitar, it's not, I'm not looking through recording it or processing it or sound processing it or something. And the other side of it is I have a small daughter as well who's, incredibly creative and physically creative and makes stuff, and so I spend time with her, and that that gets me away as well. Although she learns a lot of stuff through technology, watching videos on YouTube, and she's very interested in AI as well, and making images with it and things like that. So
Yeah, actually, what you presented yesterday, when we were listening to the piece that was created by AI, made me think about my next question. Yesterday during your lecture, so you said that AI doesn't scare you, but people's ignorance does. Could you expand on that?
Yeah, a bit. I mean, in relation to AI, I think, it's okay to be afraid of it. It's okay to, I know some teachers really want to reject it and think it's a threat, but do that from a position of knowledge. If you're going to reject it, explore it first and have good logical reasons for rejecting it. Explore what it potentially can do for you. And if at the end of that you feel that, this isn't something I want to use, this isn't something I want to do, fine. But I think, in the world, particularly at the moment, there's too much, knee-jerk reaction to rejecting things and not being open-minded and not exploring, what could be the truth, and just having your mindset that won't change or refuses to change. And I think that's, a dangerous place to be. And, that's what scares me most about our society at the moment is more to do with, willful ignorance than what potentially impact AI might have on our cognitive abilities, because in terms of how it affects your mind, how it affects your creativity, how it affects your cognitive skill, will really depend on how you use it and what you decide to do with it. It comes back to that old idiom about the hammer. You can use it to build a house, or you can use it to murder someone. But the hammer itself is it's just a tool, and AI is the same. It's just a tool. We can use it to develop our understanding, or we can not use it, or we can use it for bad purposes. But that comes from us. It doesn't come from the AI, really.
Yeah. So this is how we can also use AI in the classroom to develop critical thinking, right?
Yeah.
To check data and...
The topic of my most recent book, I have to say, AI and critical thinking. But, it's an interesting one, because whenever I was doing training, the question that I would always get asked when it came to question time was, yes, but what about critical thinking? How's this going to impact on critical thinking? So I started I thought I'll write a blog post or an article so that I've got that covered and figured it out for myself. And the more I thought about it, the more ideas I came up with. Oh yeah, you could do this, and you could do this, and you could do this, and you could do this. And so there are lots of ways it can really help us with our critical thinking. And so that ended up being a book instead of an essay. So, I think there's a lot it can do to help us.
Yes, also on this positive note, let's consider some other impacts that AI can have on English learners, for example, because we know that thanks to certain AI tools, learning can become more inclusive. For example, for students who in the past didn't have enough financial resources to have access to qualified teachers to practice the language, actually practice foreign languages, not only English, or because they are neurodiverse. Could you share your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think AI has the potential to help teachers adapt learning materials, for example, to different neurodiverse preferences or tendencies. And so that's one way that teachers can help develop neurodiverse students and become more inclusive within the classroom. It can turn a reading assignment into an audio assignment for you very quickly, so that you can sort of offer both of those options for students who are stronger in one or weaker in the other, to help them. So there are lots of things that it can do in that respect, and it can give students access themselves, because this isn't just a tool for teachers, it's something that we can teach our students to use effectively. And I think so there are lots of possibilities there, I think, that AI offers.
Yeah, it strengthens the learner's autonomy and really gives them the agency. And this also brings me to one of my first questions. In order to do that, we need teachers who are skilled and trained first, right?
Yes, absolutely.
How much AI do we actually need?
Well, I think a nice metaphor is it's like sugar. If with a little bit of sugar is good for us, but we need to make sure that we have it in the right form, and that depends on having knowledge. And so, if you understand it, you can make sure that you're getting your AI sugar in the right form. But one of the problems is, if we don't have this knowledge and we don't understand it, we'll find that we're getting it anyway because people are putting it into all sorts of things. If you go onto Google and search now, you will get some AI, and AI is powering so many different tools, that it's important to know, how much sugar you're really getting and how that's happening. And that's where I think sort of engaging with it and having knowledge of it is so important, that you make sure you're getting what's good for you and not what's good for these companies or whoever's controlling them.
Thank you, Nik, for sharing your knowledge and your experience and your skills with us. Thank you for coming to Poland. I think it's safe to say that AI in English language teaching will remain the most popular and relevant topic in the following years. Whether it's teacher training, ethical guidelines for schools, it will definitely remain a space we should watch and something we should engage with and see how and if it can help us in the future. Thank you.